This postseason has been so mind-numbingly boring that I didn't even finish watching the Western Conference Finals because there was just nothing left to be curious about. I spent a good 3 years waiting on the Spurs and Warriors playoff series to happen, only for it to end a little over halfway into Game 1, and that's pretty tragic for NBA fans in general. But on the East side, things turned out surprisingly okay to this point. Game 1 and 2 almost made me quit watching the playoffs as a whole, but in Games 3 and 4, Boston at least fought with some heart, and truth be told, that's really all I was looking for. So by the time this video goes up, we'll probably have already gotten confirmation of part 3 for the Warriors and Cavs, and since that's likely, I thought I'd go ahead and make a video detailing what you might expect in this final series. What's up NBA fans, Dom2K on the mic, and back when I did my Western Conference prediction video, I called the Warriors to beat the Cavaliers in 5 games. Obviously since the playoffs have started, I'd be surprised if that prediction became a reality, and because the 2017 playoffs have been so damn terrible, I'm actually hoping I was wrong. See, when I made that prediction, the Cavaliers were showing zero interest in any kind of defense, they were losing games, and even though they had the talent to make an interesting series, I just didn't see them doing well against a Golden State team that can put so many points on the board so quickly. And then the playoffs happened. Now, it's not like I didn't know the Cavs were going to improve for the playoffs. As a matter of fact, you can watch my video about the pattern LeBron-led team show to see that I kind of predicted this happening. However, I'd be lying if I said I thought they were going to embarrass teams the way they did in the last 2 rounds. First off, let's just look at some facts. The Cavaliers and Warriors ironically host the best field goal percentage of any team in the playoffs at exactly 50.2% at this time. This will likely change by a few percentage points after Cleveland finishes the Boston series, but the difference is kind of irrelevant. However, Cleveland is leading the playoffs pretty comfortably in 3-point percentage. They've taken more threes than the Warriors, and they've made more threes than them as well, which is important because in a series against them, they'll absolutely have to bomb the long ball enough to stay in games with them, especially if their defense falters. Speaking of defense, that's the one thing that hasn't changed much relative to the gap between the Warriors and Cavs. By all defensive stats in the playoffs, Golden State is still the better team there. However, the Cavs just narrowly edged them in the offensive rating. And when we look at how the key players have been performing, the Cavs' big three looks about the same as it always has. LeBron is leading the charge, and as a whole, he has put up some of the best playoff numbers we've seen from him. Kyrie has come alive, especially in light of his 42-point outing in Game 4 against the Celtics, and then Kevin Love has the lowest averages as usual as he's been relegated to his regular catch and shoot role, which is okay because that's what they need from him, and he's still posting a double-double, so he's doing pretty well this postseason. On the other side, Steph and KD are leading the way as expected, and they're going to become the first pair of teammates to ever enter the NBA Finals averaging 25 plus points a game, so Cleveland obviously has their hands full there. Klay and Draymond are tagging in 14 points per game each. The trouble spot here being that Klay Thompson is only shooting 36% from the 3-point line and 38% from the field overall, so he's really not shooting the ball well. We already know he can be very streaky, and his shooting will likely be an X factor against the Cavs, which is pretty significant because if his shots aren't falling, that changes things quite a bit for the Warriors. So Cleveland has clearly gotten better in the playoffs, so much so that I'm beginning to see people favorite them in a series against the Warriors. And I can understand if you're optimistic about their chances because even I think they're going to put up a better fight than I once predicted. However, you've got to keep in mind that the Cavs have been dominating teams that really aren't even in the same realm as them. The toughest fight they've got out of anybody was the Pacers in round 1 with Paul George, and that's ironically also the only team you could say that they've played with an undisputed superstar on it. And yes, I know before you say it, the Warriors haven't had a hard time at all either, I'm not denying that. But see, the difference is that we watched the Warriors absolutely dominate in the regular season as well. Not only were they ranked both first and second in offense and defense, but they beat teams by an average of 11 points a game. That means on average, they were beating teams by double digits. My point with this is to show you that they didn't come into these playoffs with anything to prove about their dominance. As a matter of fact, they've only improved on it by beating teams by an even bigger average. On the other side, Cleveland came into this playoffs needing to show that they were still this much better than that conference. So yes, they've both had a cakewalk to the finals. I'm not favoring either side with that, but we already knew how dominant the Warriors were. This is important mainly because with the Cavs, we still don't know how they're going to respond the first time a team actually has the firepower to hit them as hard as they've been hitting others. Right now, they can get away with giving the Celtics some open perimeter shots. They were able to get away with constantly crowding DeRozan and Lowry because none of their teammates get hit an open shot. But when the Warriors come to town, what's the plan here? It's not like you can follow Steph or KD around with multiple guys just to leave Klay Thompson open. Draymond Green requires defensive attention because he's got multiple ways to make plays. Overall, I think we're all aware that there's really not a great plan to defend the Warriors other than to hope they miss shots. This is part of what was happening in Game 1 against the Spurs before Kawhi went out. Shots weren't falling, and the game was going at a slow pace because with Kawhi in the offense, they really couldn't stop them from scoring. This is a pretty obvious key for Cleveland too. A slower pace is going to give them the best chance to win because when the Warriors are in transition stringing together threes and quick transition buckets, you can pretty much forget about a close game. But back to the Spurs game for 1 minute because I know this is going to come up in the comments. Many people took what they saw for 24 minutes in Game 1 and immediately took the Warriors off a pedestal because they couldn't figure out the Spurs for that short amount of time. I think this was partly because it had been so long since anyone seen the Warriors get punched in the mouth that there was a bit of an overreaction from people who hated them to begin with. But that game just made me stick harder to what I thought in the first place. The Spurs were going to push the Warriors against the wall and probably take the series to 6 games with Kawhi Leonard healthy. But what it didn't do was make me forget how good the Warriors can be. What you have to take into account is that the Spurs were playing some of their best ball while the Warriors played some of their absolute worst for that first half. So what you've got to ask yourself, if you're willing to be unbiased, is were the Spurs really going to win that series if the loss of one player caused them to lose a 20-point lead that quickly? Yes, he was their best player, but a lead that big blown that fast has to warrant the question of how far this team could have actually gone in that series. The reason I'm bringing this up is because I already see the argument against the Warriors that they went down 20 points to the first true test they had in the playoffs. I'm just trying to remind everybody it's not a good strategy to base everything off of one half of basketball, especially not when you know this team is way better than what they showed there. That being said, it's true the Warriors haven't been tested yet, so this goes for them too. When they go up against the Cavs, that's going to be their first true test in the playoffs, as well as assuming nobody gets hurt early on. The only difference is that we know Golden State's defense can function at a championship level, and for the Cavs, this late into the playoffs, I'm still questioning if their defense has that gear to contain Golden State. I noticed in the Boston series that they're giving up a lot of open shots, and in games 3 and 4, the action that Stevens had them running was really giving the Cavs trouble. Now, I'm assuming it's part of the game plan to nudge Boston towards further shots since they don't have a bunch of dead-eye shooters that can burn them from there, but I'm still not 100% sure about that. This goes back to what I was saying earlier, where it could also be that Cleveland's defense is as average as it was in the regular season, and when Marcus Smart, Avery Bradley, and Jay Crowder turns into Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, and Kevin Durant, I very much worry about Cleveland's ability on the defensive end. There's really going to be a lot of X factors in this series as well. Both teams are making good uses of their benches. The Warriors have even put JaVale McGee to work, and being that he's actually a pretty agile big man, he's been able to put in work against smaller lineups. On Cleveland's side, their bench is going to need to be red hot from the 3-point line to keep things as close as possible. The addition of Korver should prove vital in this series because they're going to want the floor spread as far as possible so LeBron has as much room as he can to get to operate. We know nothing in Cleveland's offense is going to work without him. And that's another thing I want to mention. As much as Cleveland fans should be up at night thinking about how the team is going to stop Golden State, Warriors fans should also be thinking up how they're going to stop Cleveland. Remember, they have been the hottest team in the postseason, and it's not like Kyrie Irving and LeBron James aren't just as hard to guard as any of the Warriors' best players. That and Cleveland has had an knack for getting their role players great luck, so both sides are pretty loaded. Finally, there's one aspect of the finals that nobody really takes into account, and that's the mental aspect, which has proved to be extremely important in past years. I'm not one of the people who says Curry plays terrible in the finals because his final stats aren't actually terrible at all. But when you look at the 2015 finals, where you can say Curry was fully healthy, it did take him some effort to finally shake free of Matthew Dellavedova, who was clearly giving him problems. In the end, that series took a bit longer than it should have because of it, and when you compare how Steph Curry, how confident he looked on the floor to how he looked in the season, there was definitely a bit of a difference there. And even though he wasn't 100% physically in the last finals, you have to at least wonder what kind of performance is he going to bring to the table this time around. It's not all about stats, but also about how a player asserts his dominance in the game when his go-to tactics aren't working. And in both of his finals appearances, there's been an uncomfortably long amount of time where he just wasn't contributing that much. Most of the time when LeBron is having a tough game, he's still significantly affecting the defensive end and making plays with his court vision. When Curry's threes aren't falling, especially in a final series against the Cavs, you really just start to wonder where he is. Meanwhile, we know there's not even a question of what James is going to bring to the table for the finals. Not only is he going to lead the pack, but statistically, he's one of the best ever on this stage. And I said this last year and I'll say it again. If all you're asking LeBron to do is be great enough to win 4 games, your team always has a chance. Out of all the finals he's been to, the only one you can say that he just mentally wasn't there at all was the 2011 finals, but in every other time he's really given his team a good chance to win. And what about Kevin Durant? You gotta remember, his performance against Golden State last year in crunch time was a big reason they didn't advance to the finals. And is Draymond Green gonna keep his temper in check? Many would say that his temper cost him their best chance at repeating. But between Curry, Thompson, Thompson, and Green, they all should be absolutely locked in for this finals after what happened last year. I say they really need multiple championships to erase the pain from that failure. Overall, earlier in the video, I said not only do I think my 5-game prediction is wrong, but I really hope it's wrong, because the NBA sorely needs these finals to be ultra competitive to make up for the rest of this postseason. It's really the worst one I've ever lived through. Truth be told, at full power, both of these rosters seem too talented to go down without a fight. No one in their right minds would bet on Golden State losing in 5, but when Cleveland's clicking on offense, it gets hard to imagine that they'd lose in 5 either. That's a lot of talent on one team to lose a series that quickly, and the way they've been shooting, I just kinda doubt it happens. So as far as what they expect, look, nobody ever knows exactly what a series like this is gonna be like until the two teams get on the floor together. Last season, I didn't expect the Warriors to take a 3-1 lead by an average of 20 points a game when they were healthy, and I didn't expect 6 blowout scores in the series overall. So this series could really go either way. Golden State could dominate it like many were saying earlier in the season, or the NBA gods may decide to stop hating us and the series might be 6 or 7 nail biters like we had on Christmas Day. I'm personally praying for duplicates of Christmas Day because the playoffs only come once a year, and as of right now, they have not been worth the wait. And yeah, while we're on the topic of waiting, we've waited a long 10 months for this rematch. We knew it was going to happen the minute Durant signed with the Warriors last July, and my plea to Cavaliers and Warriors supporters, if everyone is healthy in this series, please don't go into the summer making excuses for your loss. Both of these teams are incredibly talented. LeBron made sure the Cavs roster was retooled enough to compete with the Warriors, and now we've got two juggernauts in the playoffs that really have no legitimate excuses when either of them loses. So enjoy the series, and whichever side loses, just take it like a man, for fuck's sake. Anyways, those are my thoughts on part 3 of the Warriors and Cavaliers finals. Hopefully it's a close one. I'd love to know what you guys think is going to happen, so you can drop your predictions below. You can also say why you think it's going to happen, like I kind of said in this video. If you enjoyed it, like, comment, and subscribe, and make sure to hit the bell next to my name so you get notifications on the rest of my videos. I'm Dom2K, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Thanks for watching.